Just the facts. So today we're going to dissect the story that, well, it ignited a huge firestorm of controversy. It all started with a social media post from one of the highest-ranking officials in the entire U.S. government, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. He reposted a video, it was originally from CNN, and he put a caption on it, "All of Christ for all of life." The video? It featured a group of Christian pastors, and what they were advocating for, it's really put the nation on notice. They want the abolition of a woman's right to vote. So today we're asking, 4 key questions about this. Who are these pastors, and how large and influential is their church network really? Plus, how many Americans actually agree with these ideas? And maybe most importantly, how do women, especially Christian women, feel about pastors who seem to be leading a charge to undo the 19th Amendment? Okay, let's get to the facts. The central figure in that video is a man named Douglas Wilson. He's the senior pastor of Christ Church. It's in Moscow, Idaho, which is a small college town. He's also the founder of a network called the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. You'll see it called CREC. In that CNN segment, Pastor Wilson and his associates, there was another pastor named Toby Sumter, they laid out their whole vision for society. So Pastor Sumter said, and I'm quoting here, "In my ideal society, we would vote as households. I would ordinarily be the one to cast the vote, but I would cast the vote having discussed it with my household." And that really is the core of their proposal. They want to repeal the 19th Amendment, and they'd replace it with a system where the male head of a household gets 1 vote for the whole family. In their view, women are supposed to submit to their husbands. It's a belief that was echoed by a female congregant right in the video. She said, "He is the head of our household, and I do submit to him." Now, these views, they're part of a broader ideology. It's one that Pastor Wilson proudly calls Christian nationalism. Yeah, he told CNN his goal is for America to become a Christian nation and then ultimately for the world to be a Christian world. So what this means is a theocracy where the country's laws are all based on their own specific, very conservative interpretation of the Bible. Okay, so it's one thing for a pastor in Idaho to hold these views, right? But it's a completely different thing for the U.S. Secretary of Defense to be promoting them. And Pete Hegseth, he isn't just some casual observer. Factually, he is a member of a CREC-affiliated church down in Tennessee. And after this whole controversy blew up, a Pentagon spokesperson actually confirmed this. They told NPR, quote, "The secretary is a proud member of a church affiliated with the Congregation of Reformed Evangelical Churches. The secretary very much appreciates many of Mr. Wilson's writings and teachings." This official confirmation, it moved the story from just a simple social media gaffe into a matter of, national importance. Which brings us to our second question. Just how big is this movement? You might think it sounds like a fringe group, but Doug Wilson's Christ Church is a significant power center. Yeah, based on reporting from places like The Guardian, the main church in Moscow has somewhere between 900 and 2,000 members, and its influence, it extends way beyond that. The CREC network has grown to over 150 churches all across the U.S. and even in several other countries. And what's more, they've built an entire ecosystem in Moscow. I'm talking a K-12 school, a publishing house, and an accredited college called New St. Andrews. Wow! They've even planted a new church in Washington, D.C. So this is an organized, it's a growing, and a very well-funded movement. So, how many people actually agree with them? On the specific issue of repealing a woman's right to vote, the number is probably very small. But on the broader ideology, Christian nationalism, the numbers are pretty significant. A February 2024 poll from PRRI, that's the Public Religion Research Institute, it found that 10% of Americans are adherents of Christian nationalism and another 20% are sympathizers. So that's a total of 30% of the population who are, to some degree supportive of the idea that the U.S. should be a Christian nation with laws based on the Bible. And finally, and I think this is perhaps the most important question, how do women, especially Christian women, feel about pastors who seem to be leading a charge to undo the 19th Amendment? Well, the reaction from many has been, as you'd expect, one of alarm. Pastor Doug Pagitt, he's the executive director of the progressive evangelical group Vote Common Good, and he told the Associated Press that while these ideas are held by small fringes, it was very disturbing to see them amplified by the Secretary of Defense. And inside the broader evangelical world, there has been this long, often contentious debate about the role of women. For years, you've had prominent female leaders like the late Rachel Held Evans and the Bible teacher Beth Moore speaking out against these rigid patriarchal structures. It's a system, they argue, that can diminish women and even enable abuse. So the idea of completely removing a woman's political voice, that is the most extreme extension of that whole patriarchal view. And while some women inside the CREC, like that congregant in the video, they willingly embrace this model, it just stands in arch opposition to the views held by the vast majority of American women. That includes many conservative and evangelical women who really value their right to participate directly in our democracy. Okay, so to recap the facts, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, used his platform to promote a video of pastors led by a guy named Doug Wilson who advocate for Christian nationalism, and they want to abolish women's right to vote. These pastors, they lead an organized and a growing network of over 150 churches and educational institutions. And while their view on suffrage is, it's extreme, the underlying ideology of Christian nationalism finds sympathy with up to 30% of Americans. The reaction has been one of widespread concern. Particularly over the normalization of these kinds of ideas by a top government official. So, here's a question we'd like you to think about. When ideas that seek to fundamentally change the rights of a segment of the population are amplified by those in power, what's the line between personal religious freedom and official endorsement? And what does it mean for the future of a pluralistic democracy?